Hi, thanks for coming and checking out our module. I'm one of the founders of Bela, and Bela's been around for 8 years now, which is shocking to me. And what we mainly do is we make maker hardware for people who want to work with sound. And we make other things as well, and one of those things is touch controllers, because we really notice there's no good touch controllers around for various projects, so we made them. And they're capacitive touch sensors, and we sell them. They're called Trill. And after a while, we started to want to make things with Trill, because we really love these touch sensors. We think they're really great. And we ended up putting that technology into this module. So this module is called Gliss, and it's a capacitive touch controller. And so it uses that same capacitive sensing that we used for the Trill touch sensors. And they are very, very good at sensing position. They're very, very accurate. And they can also sense the touch size, how hard you're pressing. And so we've got these two axes of sensing. And so that's what drives the Gliss module and where it came from. And we also, that kind of came about because we thought that there's, kind of not very many good touch controllers for modular, so we decided to make one. And so this is it here. I hope you can see it on the camera. This part is called the touch strip, and there's 2 outputs, an input, and a button, and that's it. It's just a little 4 HP module. And it has 4 modes, and those modes are control, record, signal, and notes. And I'll show you each of them, and then Mark's gonna show you what real musicians do with these things. It's got a beautiful setup. So the first, and as you go through these, this is going through the menu, you can see that it's got a little animation every time you change modes. And this one is control mode, and that means that you put your finger down and you can control things directly. And that is what we're on now. And so you can see on the recording on the iPad here, the top is my position output and the bottom is my touch size. And so it has these combined 2 axes of sensing, which I have to say, when I started using Gliss, I was surprised at myself, even though I'd thought about this for a long time. I was surprised at how different it is to combine those 2 things. You can also split them apart. So for example, we can then change it into a dual sensor. So now we've got 2 position sensors, the top and the bottom. Those aren't touch sensitive, but they're 2 position sensors. And there's also 2 touch sizes. So we've got these kind of pressure sensitive touch sizes. And so this is the direct control mode. The other thing that it does is you can latch these positions. So it latches the position, and then I can unlatch it by pressing the button, which is really nice. You can hold these big long things and then press them. And that latching also, you can also just latch the position. So the direct control mode, that's what everyone expects from a touch sensor. You have to be able to touch it and do specific things. But then we started to think, well, what else could we do with it? And the second mode is record mode. And in record mode, what you can do, settings from before. What you can do with record mode is you can draw in a pattern, and that, again, combining touch size and position. And as soon as you lift your finger, it just starts looping it. And that can be up to 75 seconds. They can be quite long and very, very slow, things that evolve over time. And they can be updated at any time on the fly. You just put your finger down, draw something in, and it starts again. And that loops both that touch size and the position. And again, just like control mode, this can be split into 2. So here you can see the bottom sensor is still, that's my touch position, my touch size that I recorded earlier, but I can just update that one and then update the top one as well. So these 2 are asynchronous, although if I press the button again, then they start at the same time. And the same is true of the two touch sizes. They will loop as well, the top one and the bottom one. And not only does it have this, I'll just take it back to the actual waveform. Not only does it have this like looping mode, because I mean looping is cool, but you know, what if you want to draw in an envelope, for example? You know, an envelope module, can you draw in an envelope? If you draw in something like really nice and, I don't know, like some sort of waveform, then you can put it into trigger mode. And in trigger mode, it only starts when it receives a trigger. So for example, I can put in a clock here, and it will, and as I slow down that clock, it slows down the triggering as well, which is really nice. It means you can loop it, you can hook it to all kinds of other things. There's a few modes, a few playback modes with this record mode, but the one that I really like is clock. And with this one, you can put a clock in the output. So I've got one from my PAMs here. And what you can do with clock, now usually you put your finger down and you draw in something. As soon as you lift up your finger, then it starts to loop or is ready to trigger. But with clock mode, because we press the button to start that recording and to stop it, you can lift your finger between, so you can make these disjointed sort of patterns. And the nice thing is that you can also improvise on top of it while it's playing. It doesn't update it. So you can have these like percussive patterns, and these patterns are, as soon as you hit the record button, it snaps to the closest incoming clock tick, and when you hit to stop the recording, it snaps to that. So it's always snapped to whatever your incoming clock is. So example, if I turn up the rate, and it will let me improvise over it and then just go back to playing to the clock. And this is really nice. I mean, I'm always into percussive things, and I really like this mode quite a lot. And it will, when it's in trigger, for example, it starts it over and over and over again based on the last trigger. But if we go back to just looping over and over, so it's a really lovely way to put in these kind of evolving patterns. I mean, 75, I think one time I had my finger on the touch strip to record over 75 seconds, and it was a long time. So other than that, we also have this signal mode. And I think that Mark's heard me say this a lot of times, but signal mode I really feel is like the true powerhouse of this module. And what signal mode does, so I've got a CV signal going in here. Maybe I'll change it to number 1. That's a sine wave. And it visualizes our incoming CV signal with that green point that's jumping up and down. And you can see that in the output, the top is, sorry about that. The top is the signal, and the bottom is the inverted signal. And you can scale and offset these over time, which are like just as you're playing, which are really nice to kind of explore really weird harmonics that happen. And you can also determine the clipping range. So anything outside of, you can see on the iPad, anything outside that range will be clipped. And that is all dynamically customizable to change that offsetting. And not only does the signal mode do CV, it also does audio input. There's an audio mode. So if I take this output and put that into this other, you can see I've got a VU meter there, which is visualizing my audio output on the second Gliss, and we can also scale that. Oh, there it is. And it's and so we can scale that. It can act as an attenuator. It can, again, we can clip that signal. And when we start doing that with audio, you can get really interesting distortion and start getting these like really weird rising edges. And so that is the signal mode. So it's good for both audio and CV. And the last mode that it has, the last of 4, is the That's not right. Is notes mode. And what notes is 5 tuned voltages. It comes tuned to a pentatonic scale, but those are tunable to whatever you like. And it's playable as both a keyboard and a step sequencer. I'm going to show you the step sequencer. Mark's going to show you the keyboard later. But you can see that here I've got it going through these steps, and it will just adjust to whatever rate I want. If I hold down a step, it'll hold that step until I let it go again. And you can see on the, actually that output should be, and what that, you can see in the bottom trace, it sends out a trigger every time you, every time it steps, and then it sends out a bigger trigger when it's on the first step, so you can keep track of where you are in the sequence. And the thing that I really like about this mode is that it's able to, you can, as it's going through the sequence, you can start to customize the steps. So right now all 5 steps are on, but I can change one to a hold step, so it just holds the last voltage, or I can make it go to 0 each time, or I can just remove it entirely, and now it's a 4-step sequence, and I can do that dynamically to any of these steps just as it's playing, and put them back in, take them out, and it's a way of like really making some interesting patterns. And with especially like interesting clocks, you can get like really wacky step sequencers. So those are the 4 modes of Gliss, and there's I've not gone into the submenus, just the greatest hits. So that's the yeah. I'm gonna invite Mark up to show another way that all of these can be used in a more musical context. So do you want to come up and we can switch on?
I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
How do I know in which mode I am?
That's a good point. To get into the menu, you hold down the button and tap the strip with 2 fingers, then you're in the menu. And at the top selector is to move through the modes, and each mode has a little animation. So now we're in record, now we're in signal, now we're in notes. So it's a little short animation that shows you which mode that you're in.
Hello everybody, thanks for taking time out of your lives to be here and watch us do this stuff. Yeah, so Astrid went over kind of the, what the stuff actually does in a technical sense of it, and now I'm going to try and show it in a musical context, as it were. I'm not going to explain so much about what's being patched here, because that would take much too long, and we're focusing on what we're doing with the touch controllers. But yeah, I'll just jump into it. So first of all, for context, there's pitch information coming from the octatrack, which is controlling the pitch of these 2 modules. I didn't mean to make something so sad sounding, but got too far into it and couldn't go back, so hold on to your hearts. Okay, so Astrid mentioned the notes mode, and she used it as a sequencer, but the like default setting of it, I would say, is this keys mode. And so normally you would connect this like directly to your volt per octave input, and you could do your slide between notes and do glissando and tremolo and things like that. But the way I've patched this is I'm mixing it with the volt per octave information coming from the octatrack. So basically they're tuned in an octave, a fifth, an octave, and another fifth, so that I can do inversions, well they're not inversions, basically transpositions of this melodic information. So we're can hear how they're being moved into different octaves and also offset by fifths. So this is just a nice way to augment a pre-existing melodic information in a way that you feel fit at the time. And when I take my fingers off, it'll remember the last thing I pressed, so it'll stay there. So I'll bring it back to the lowest octave. And so the next thing I've patched up on here is we have control modes split into two halves. And the first one I have patched to the decay time. Right? So we can hear what's happening there. I can also latch this. If, say, I like this amount of decay, I can press a button, it'll stay in this position, and I can unlatch it. And now the bottom one is patched to basically it's going to add harmonics to both of these signals. So I'll let you hear what that sounds like. We're adding harmonics. I can do both of these at the same time while offsetting the pitches again. And I can latch them both at the same time if I wanted. Make them all open, latch, unlatch. Right. So that's the first control mode I've got going. And now I'll bring in, we have some effects coming from the Rainmaker. And what I'm going to do is, again, I have a control mode split in two. I'm just opening the filter on the delay taps on here. So we can hear this fluttering coming in. Or I can close it. So let's maybe add some harmonics while we do that. Some decay. I like having these pitch offsets because it will create like kind of different views of the same pitch information which is coming out of here all the time, and sometimes you're a little bit surprised of what comes out pitch wise or harmony wise between the two voices. Anyway, so the bottom one here I also have pitch to, this has a comb filter in it, which is, the pitch is being controlled by the same volt per octave signal, which is controlling one of these voices. So as I increase the feedback, now that's resonating. So it's kind of like getting another voice. This, a kind of more whistling. It's also making a lot of sub-harmonics, if you can hear that too. Maybe in this room, but... Anyway, so I'm gonna latch all this where it is now. Actually a bit less decay. Okay, so now our next one, because you can never have too many Gliss modules, alright? It's also fine having one. One is definitely useful. This is just to show, you know, you can go crazy with it, for sure. So this next one is connecting to it's called grain size of the pitch shifting on the Rainmaker. So basically if I'll add some more harmonics, it'll make it a bit more obvious. and then slower fluttering. I'll take the dry voices out. So now it's quite fast, almost like an audio rate. Almost sounds a bit like ring modulated or something. And then when it's longer, this is fluttering. And I'm still recording this whole time. And I'll take my finger off and I'll just be doing what I just happen to be doing at that time. So I'll put the dry sounds back in. It's good when things are happening, you're kind of interacting with this not purely with an intention of what's coming out and then you're sort of surprised by the result. It's always a nice thing about this stuff. But we have more glisses to go through. What are they doing? I can switch off the gates of what's triggering the pattern right now. And eventually this will fade to silence. Okay, now that's silent again. So I have another record mode here split in two. And what they're doing is, if we look at these little smaller sequences here, as I move one, it triggered a gate. Okay, so now we have this unquantized rhythmic information. It's just being triggered from when I was moving my finger. And I can do that for the second voice. Okay. So this is a way of getting unquantized rhythmic information in there. Because these modes can be, the record and the control mode can be, they don't have to be mapped to a filter cutoff or a timbre control or something. You can also use them to advance sequences or control the playback position of a sampler or something like that, which I don't have here. But for example, we made a video recently where I use record mode to control the playback position of these samplers. So the point is that you can connect this stuff to many things, and that's always good to think about, not going for the most obvious thing straight away. But now I can put the gates back on, the quantized gates, and we'll be combining these new unquantized triggers with the quantized ones. And then we have one last gliss. What is it doing? Some more record mode. So this is just going to be this is going to affect the timbre. We hear how the character of the oscillators changes. So we're doing wave multiplication. The wave folder sound on the complex oscillator is becoming a saw. And again, I can just be chilling, recording this, for what is it, 75 seconds? Most of the time you don't need that much time because a little bit of just improvised movement is enough. Like a really classic thing would be to just control the decay time of a drum or something like that, and you can just do a few seconds worth. It doesn't even need to be quantized, and it's going to be doing the job that you want. And if you were programming it, it would take much longer and this is just a much more direct and immediate way to do it. Yeah, so that's all of the explanation of everything that's happening. But maybe I'll just play around a little bit and see if we can make anything else cool happen. I mean, it sounded like what it sounded like, right? We kind of get the musical vibe, but hopefully you are seeing how with a combination of these things, you can really, like, for example, I haven't touched anything on the modules themselves. It's very nice just to be able to touch controllers. It's something that I never really thought about doing myself until I had the opportunity to work with these, and once you get used to it, you kind of realize that, oh, this has its place. And especially because of I've used like other capacitive controllers based on older technology, which aren't so accurate with position and touch size and things like that, but this just does exactly what you think it's going to do, and more. As we've seen, I haven't used signal mode here at all. No disrespect to signal mode, but yeah, sorry. We could have run something through it and attenuated it and offset it, and that would have been nice and things like that. But yeah, I think that's about it of what I'm going to show. So hope you enjoyed. And also, if you're watching this after the fact and you're curious about anything that's happened and I haven't explained it, you can comment and things like that, and we'll attempt to get back to you. So yeah, thanks for everyone's time. Oh, and if anyone here wants to play with this stuff, be my guest.
Have you got any questions?
Oh, if you've got any questions, yeah. So, Astrid and I are happy to talk. No pressure though. What's up?
So, is it possible to, like in the keyboard mode, is it possible to quantize external CD to the keyboard notes?
Yeah, no. But you can use external signals to tune the individual notes.
Yeah.
That would be cool if you could have an external signal and then it'd almost be like a touch quantizer or something, I suppose. Yeah.
So
Does that exist? Yeah, I'm not sure if that... Yeah, well, I'm not the programmer, so I have to send that one upstairs. But it's a good idea, though. Well, something that people have done, which is quite impressive, is rather than using the notes mode, is using the record mode into a quantizer.
Yeah.
So that you're like effectively drawing your melody, which there's been some videos we've published about this, like Sam Barker did something with a quantizer in a similar way. And this is this very like immediate feedback which people respond to, where it's like, oh, I'm making the notes happen. I'm feeling the notes. Yeah.
And you could play graphical scores. Basically.
Yeah, within this range in 2 dimensions. Yeah. But yeah, if you want to screw around, anybody, be my guest. It might be hard to understand what's happening and why, but we'd also make it patch from nothing if people want to try that.
Question. I wasn't here at the beginning when you introduced it. But is it one mode at the same time per strip, or?
Oh yeah, so these are both in notes mode. These are all control mode. The yellow ones are all record mode, and there's also signal mode, which if I can just unpatch stuff now. It doesn't matter anymore. So if I put a signal in, okay, we can see that. Give me some more different voltages, please. Okay, so there's this signal mode. This is what's coming in, right? And I can attenuate it and offset it both at the same time. I could also clip the signal. Is that, how do you do it again? It's 1. So now these red lines decide from which point the signal gets clipped. So like it'll effectively be a square wave after it hits this threshold. It's much easier to see with the oscilloscope we had going before, but yeah, so anytime the signal is outside these 2 lines, it'll like be limited to that point. Yeah.
It does scale it to the full voltage range and clips it.
Yeah. something we also haven't said this whole time is that you can customize the voltage output for every single mode of both the outputs, and it will save that for every mode. So for instance, like
It doesn't save it for every mode. It's customizable per mode.
yeah, that's what I meant to say. yeah. That's what I meant to
If
say.
it was universal, it would be great.
Yeah. Per
Video
mode.
applications, yeah.
But which makes sense because, for instance, all this Verba stuff wants 10 volts. So, for instance, the envelopes don't have attenuators on them, so a tiny bit of voltage is going to open it a lot. So if I want to be modulating my decay time, I can go into the voltage setting menu, and there are presets, but I would normally, hold it. And then now I can set the bottom voltage and the top voltage, and I could make it like 2 volts or something. So it's a useful range for this control without an attenuator. For the input, the first output and the second output for every mode. So that's really useful. It's not something that you can like really demo that interestingly, I suppose, but when you actually have it, you're like, it's good to have. Yeah.
What's the reasoning for having just 5 different notes in the notebook? Is it because that's what you can reliably track? Or?
No, that's what reliably fits on the touch strip. But if you, well, if you've got tiny little fingers, with the notes mode, just like sequencer mode, you can take notes out of the keyboard as well. A lot of people prefer to use 4 because it's kind of a nice size. And you can you can switch the keys on and off, and then it will redistribute those keys evenly across the touch strip. So there is 5 because that was the maximum we thought was reasonable.
It's like, how big is your finger? Yeah.
6 just felt really crowded. 5 feels a bit crowded, but it makes sense. 4 didn't seem like enough. 6 was too many.
Always depends on the finger size.
Yeah.
And each of those keys is pressure sensitive as well, so there needs to be like a bit of room for pressure sensitivity and vibrato.
Yeah.
That would be tricky.
Yeah.
Is it possible to clock the module and loop it in bars?
Yes.
Draw it in CV?
Yeah, so again, I mentioned this, we made a video specifically about this, basically, so this is record mode, right, all these yellow ones, but you can clock it. So Astrid also demoed this. So basically you can send in a clock or any trigger signal. So honestly, when I use it, I'm not just sending it 16th notes, I will make like a rhythm and send it to it, and then you hit the button to enable record, and then you do your pattern. Doesn't have to be a you can do discrete values, I guess is the fancy way to say it, where you can jump between values, which you can't do in record mode otherwise, because it is recording when your finger is on the strip or not. And then when you stop recording, it will quantize it to the nearest pulse that it receives. So if I was making dance music or something like that, I would be using that mode almost like all the time. Yeah. It can also be like in a one-shot mode, so you can use it as like an envelope where you customize the shape and stuff too. So it will just play once and then stop, rather than.